What's up everyone, welcome back to the E9X Bimmer channel. As you can see, the engine is ready to get rebuilt and I am so excited, I'm pumped.
Here's a quick reminder of where we left off since the beginning of the series. After removing the oil pan, we discovered that rod number 4 was officially toast. This meant we had to fully disassemble the engine so that we could get the crankshaft out and check if it was still reusable. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. With that horrible news, I still decided to keep tearing down this engine so that I could replace the out-of-spec rod. Lucky for me, I happened to find a cheap N55 in the meanwhile with a forged crankshaft and decided to install that in my N55. Everything worked out and was in spec, so I finished in the last episode by reassembling the bottom end. Now, let's finish this engine rebuild.
There's a few clarifications I have to mention, but we can basically just start building this engine right away.
All right, real quick. I know I don't have my mic, but I opened the oil pump just to check if the oil pump was ruined. Overall, scratches, they seem fine. Nothing that really catches on my nail, so that's good news. And yeah, I've thoroughly checked the pump and there's no shavings anywhere. So I'm just gonna leave it like this. I'm not gonna disassemble it, but yeah, I'm confident that this pump is good now that I've opened it and seen that there's no shavings. And we can see that the oil filter did its job.
Now, the first step I'm gonna do in this video is reinstall the engine on the engine stand. And because I'm doing this, I need to install the flywheel first. You don't have to install it at the exact same time as I do, but since this engine will be on the engine stand for the rest of the build, and I need to time the engine later in the video, I prefer doing it right now so it will be done because I won't have access to those bolts or to the flywheel at all once that this engine is back on the engine stand. So in the last video, we installed the rear main seal and we installed the sensor back in its place. Don't forget to reinstall this, otherwise your car won't know its crankshaft position. Do not forget this magnetic wheel because that's how the sensor can read the crankshaft position. So as you can see, there's a little dowel. Now we can get our flywheel. This also has a locating dowel pin. In the repair manual, BMW says that you need to replace all 6 of these flywheel bolts. In one of my other N55 rebuilds that I didn't film, I just reused the same ones. You can decide what you want to do. For this rebuild, I am trying to do it on a budget, but I'm also trying to do it legit, right? So I'll replace them. They're not too expensive. Now we can torque these at 60 Newton meters with a torque angle of 45 degrees. Now we can install our engine stand hoist. There you go. Let me install this on the engine stand. As you can see, the block surface and the head surface by extent are quite dirty, a bit oily. There's just a bit of grime here and there, probably some carbon deposits. That's very normal. Obviously, to save on cost, I didn't bring this to a machine shop to get it decked. Anyways, this engine never overheated, so there shouldn't be any problems or warpage with that head or the block. So there's a lot of arguing online on what you should do in this case, especially for aluminum blocks, how to remove all this grime. A good way to do it is with Scotch-Brite. This is fine Scotch-Brite. Actually, as you can see, very fine Scotch-Brite. Don't use the ones on the pneumatic guns. If you're gonna do this by hand with a cloth like this and probably some WD-40 or brake cleaner just to gently wipe off all the grime. Essentially, I'm gonna cut a smaller piece and then just lightly go over and clean off the whole surface. After that, make sure that you clean off everything. You can barely see, there's a couple of marks from the Scotch-Brite, but honestly, the head surface remains to be good. So I'm just gonna keep doing this on the entire head, or on the entire block, sorry, and on the head surface over there. And I'll catch you guys later.
Now, as you can see, after a lot of hours of scrubbing and washing and scrubbing and washing, I got to a pretty good result. I'm pretty satisfied with this result, to be honest. It's not perfect, probably doesn't look like a perfectly decked surface, but I'm pretty confident that the head gasket will do its job and both surfaces look good, they're clean, so on for the rest of the project.
All right, let's get to installing these pistons. Now, before installing our piston, I want to clean the cylinder walls. Obviously, I'm going to start with cylinder number 1. The top is still dirty, but that doesn't really matter. Before reinstalling it, we are going to put a lot of oil on it. I'm going to put the top bearing right now, so it's going to be way easier for me. Make sure that the tab aligns with the notch inside of the rod. Push it in. There you go, just like that. Now, we want to mount these dry because we're going to be testing out the clearances and you don't want any oil film in between these. Just make sure that your piston ring gaps are not aligned. Just using some engine oil, even oiling the inside of this. There you go. Okay, let's do cylinder number 6 as well. Now that both pistons are inside the block, now we can flip this over, make sure to hold these down so they just don't fall, and then we'll be able to try out the clearances. Now you want to get your rod cap and put the new bearing in. And you're going to want to reuse the old bolts to check for the clearance, but do not reuse the old bolts after that for like the final torquing and final usage of it. Also, these are directionals. So as you can see here, they're cracked here. They have like this rugged surface. This has to align with the rugged surface of the rod. So when you place it on there, if it doesn't look right, if you can still see a seam, then that means it's not on the right side, and don't torque it because you're going to ruin the rod cap and the rod. Before putting our rod back, we have to put our plastic gauge back. So the bolts are torqued first of all at 20 Newton meters and then 2 times 70 degrees. That's cylinder number 1 done. Both rod caps have been torqued. Now we just have to loosen them back up. With your plastic gauge, you want to be between 25 thousandths of a millimeter and 76 thousandths of a millimeter. So between this whole range, you have to be in between that. So as you can see, there's a lot of play. And when I read it, as I can see, I have 51 thousandths of a millimeter, which is pretty on point. The bearings on number 6 are fine. 51 thousandths is a bit bigger, but 76 thousandths is smaller. Next step is just to remove any residue from that plastic gauge, and then we can lube up the bearings and torque them down with the final torque with new bolts. BMW states that for your rod bolts, you need to clean them off with alcohol or brake cleaner and then oil them back up. So for the oil, I'll just use engine oil. Those are both pistons done. Let's take her for a spin. All right, well, now we can head on, we can proceed to the next pistons. Oh my God. What a beauty. Now the big moment is finally here, placing the head gasket. I probably tried to clean these holes, the bolt holes, like 50 times with compressed air. I've done the best that I can. I don't think there should be any problems. One last wipe down. All right. Now that the cylinder head is finally back on the block, I'm also going to go and start cleaning around the surfaces and stuff. Before the head bolts, you're essentially doing the opposite now. So you're going from inside to outside. And so you're placing in, we're doing reverse order. Essentially, we're doing reverse order from when we disassembled it. Okay, turns out you need to replace the washers, but I didn't buy those replacements. I thought they were in the kit. So I'm just gonna reuse the old washers. A lot of people did it. Apparently it's fine. Just make sure that you oil both surfaces of the washer so that when the bolt crushes the washer, it doesn't stick to the bolt. Make sure to place a washer back on every hole. Also, one thing to note is don't wash off the coating, oil coating on the bolt. Apparently you have to leave it like that. So just make sure to put some oil on the washer and then place your bolt. Yeah. So you want to start at 30 Newton meters, following the BMW diagram. T50 for the small bolts. Now we move on to doing 90 degrees for all the bolts. Okay, and those are all the head bolts torqued. It went rather pretty well, except for these two, and I'm quite worried for these ones. I don't know what the result will be, what will happen, but like it felt like there was probably stuff in the threads, or I don't know, like the bolt wasn't well oiled. I'm not too sure. Like I was able to do 30 Newton meters, I was able to do the 90 degrees-ish, and then another 90-ish plus degrees. I didn't do the full 180 because I was worried that the bolts would get snapped. If it's normal, then I guess I'll know next time. Please let me know if that crackling can be normal or if it's a sign that I didn't do my job correctly. So now you want to get your 3 medium bolts. All of them are torqued at 22 Newton meters. Those are all the cylinder head bolts torqued. Let's not forget our eccentric shaft stop. There you go, just hand tight. Another thing I removed and that we must not forget is putting back the oil feed. Make sure that it's not clogged, because that's the #1 issue of why these eccentric shaft gears fail. This bolt is torqued at 10 Newton meters. For these spark plug wells, the only real thing that you need to change are these metal gaskets. And there you go. Okay, now we're at the point of timing our engine finally. First thing you want to do actually is remove this pin right here. This is the TDC pin, and this is how you can lock your flywheel and lock your engine at TDC. To do that, you just want to remove your pin. There you go. And now we can just insert our tool into this hole. So on these cars with this type of flywheel, the way you can differentiate if you're at TDC is with this little slot actually. And so essentially you want to fit your TDC pin into this hole. And there you go. I can't move the flywheel anymore. One other check you want to do is to make sure that your camshafts are in the correct position. Another way to know is to see that your barcodes are facing upwards and that the channel locks are upright, are perpendicular. So what you want to get is your camshaft tool. And so this just fit in snugly. As you can see, the camshafts aren't perfectly in line, so we'll just have to move them a bit. So essentially you get the tool like this. But make sure that these are loose, so loosen the bolts a bit. That way you can have enough play, get on the cams. So it should slide on relatively easy. If you have to like hit on it so it fits, then that means the cams aren't well aligned. Then a little trick I have is that with the bolts, I just try to thread a couple of threads in just to see if the bolt holes are aligned. But yeah, essentially you just want to make sure that your tool sits flat on the surfaces, and then you want to tighten these bolts down. Not too tight. You just want the tool to be held down. Okay. Now we need to remove the crank hub that we put in temporarily so that we can put all the timing chains back. So with the lock in the back, this should free up relatively easy. Yeah, there we go. So if you guys don't remember, I have to use a N55 crankshaft bolt because, well, I'm using an N54 crankshaft. And so this is a slightly modified N55 crank hub. So first of all, the whole lower timing chain system has to go in first, and then it's going to be the upper timing chain that goes over it. Essentially just bring it back in. This should slot in the crankshaft. There we go. And then this should slot in right here. Perfect. Now let's remove this plug. Got a 5/16. I don't know what the metric size is, but this one fits well in it. The bolt holding down the vacuum pump is reusable. Okay, now we can get our very small aluminum bolt. Obviously, this one I prefer to replace it, and I'm pretty sure in the manual it also says that you have to replace it. To align this bolt correctly, you have to pull the timing chain system a bit so that she fits in correctly. Got a 8mm quarter inch, and that just fits inside, just so I can bring it inside of the hole. All right, we got our bolt fully tightened down, as you can see. Again, make sure that everything is sat correctly and notched into the correct place. Now let's just torque that bolt. So the torque of this very small bolt is 4 Newton meters, a staggering 4 Newton meters. And they asked for an additional 45 degrees. At that torque, I feel comfortable using just a normal socket to torque this. All right, let's place back our screw plug. And so this screw plug is torqued at 27 Newton meters. All right, next step is to put the whole timing chain system. And for that, you wanna make sure that your gear is in the right place if you've taken it out. I've left it in its place. So you see that there's a little notch. This notch is supposed to face backwards. So the timing chain system goes in like this. I'll just screw these bolts in to hold the timing chain system in place. Now you want to put your guide pins just so that the timing chain guides are in the correct spot. The big screw plug will have the big guide pin, which is really long. And the one over the oil filter housing a bit higher up is a smaller one. Now you want to torque this upper timing chain guide at 14 Newton meter. Let's put back the cover. Now you want to torque this screw plug at 25 Newton meters. You want to torque this one at 20 Newton meters. And now you want to torque this screw plug at 50 Newton meters, which is a lot. You know what? I won't trust BMW on that one. I'll just leave it like that, actually. I don't want to torque that anymore. Final thing to torque for your timing chain guides are these two little bolts. You want to torque these at 8 Newton meters. Now we can install our camshaft adjusters. And you must not forget from the first episode where I mentioned if you forgot which adjuster went where, well, if you read on it, see aus. Aus is for exhaust. And ein or ins is intake. So this one is the exhaust one. I'm going to install the intake one. I prefer installing the gear part in first. Oh God. Now we can put the exhaust one. All right, there you go. Put the covers back on. And now what you want to do is you want to take the holder tool like this, and you want to align these things into the holes. There you go. Now we can install the bolts. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the old bolts in just temporarily, and I'm not going to do the angle. I'm just going to torque them at their nominal value. And then once I've checked that the timing is good, I'll put in new camshaft bolts because you have to replace these. Now that the camshafts are roughly in the right spot, now you want to put your crank hub back in. Let's get our new bolts. In my case, this is a N54 bolt simply because of the crankshaft, but for you guys, if you're just rebuilding your N55 normally, then use a N55 crank hub bolt. All right, our bolt here is seated. Now for the tensioner, you want to use this tensioner tool. Let's just screw this in. This feels pretty tight. Now we can screw in this little rod. And the rest of the timing chain is quite loose now. Now for the tension, it's finger tight essentially. Okay, so like I said, these are the old bolts. We're just gonna torque them at 20 Newton meters, but not do the angle. Now before torquing anything on the vacuum pump / oil pump timing chain system, we have to torque this one in so that the timing chain doesn't move. Now, this is a new bolt, and since we're gonna be checking the timing, we're not gonna fully torque it, just like I did with the camshaft bolts, but we're just gonna torque it at 100 Newton meters, spin it around, see if everything goes well, and then if everything is good, then we'll be able to torque this fully after that. One last thing before torquing the big central bolt is to put something that will prevent the flywheel to move. That TDC pin is not strong enough to hold the whole crankshaft at 100 Newton meters. So we're gonna put this flywheel timing tool, and then we're gonna put something to jam it in. Now this screw has to be washed and oiled. And this bolt is torqued at 66 Newton meters. Now we need to put in the oil pump. So let's spin this engine over. There's essentially two dowels that you have to align the oil pump with. Now you want to line up the sprocket with the oil pump. There we go. I'm just reinstalling the old bolts temporarily. All right, now that the oil pump is temporarily placed, we now torque this part. And for the oil pump bolts, you want to torque it at 20 Newton meters and 45 degrees. And so this is all of the bolts temporarily torqued. Now let's remove all of the timing and spin the engine at least 2 times. We'll spin it a couple of times to make sure that everything is good. Let's remove the TDC pin. Now go really slowly. You shouldn't feel any tension anywhere. This should spin really, really good. There's no spark plugs, no anything. So there's no reason for it to lock up. All right, took the executive decision that I will be torquing the new bolts in completely. So let's put in our new bolts. We're gonna torque the inlet first. So these should be fully torqued now. In all honesty, guys, this thing always fits. It's just this little thing here, the adjusters. It's always like a tiny bit off, like just a tiny bit. All right, well, after consulting a lot of forums and asking questions around about other engine builders who built these engines, for the misaligned cams, whenever I'm like spinning it like over 2 revolutions or whatever, that apparently is also normal because, well, without the oil pressure, well, these Vanos units shift a bit, right? Because I can essentially move like back and forth a bit before the cam actually moves. And so again, once there will be oil pressure, apparently this should just all go back to normal. All right, so let me show you last time how apparently you're supposed to do it. So I just logged the engine at TDC. So apparently the actual method is to put just this square right here, then put your forks on. And so as you can see, both of them are at an angle. So you can just push them so that they can be flat. And so as you can see, I moved the camshafts just a tad bit and they line up perfectly with the tool. Now, if I put this Vanos tool in, she fits in perfectly. And so this means that the engine is now perfectly timed. Obviously, we will need to do the 270 degrees with that bolt, but I'll only be doing that once the engine is in the car. So obviously all the aluminum bolts that I put on this oil pump were just put in temporarily so I could time the engine, but now I'm just gonna replace them with the real ones and torque them to spec. So essentially there's 3 different sizes of bolts. The main important thing is that the longest one is here in this corner, and the only difference in torque is that the longer one needs to have 180 degrees of rotation, whilst the 2 other ones need 90 degrees of rotation. And the darker one is always here in the back. That's how I can differentiate them. So all 3 bolts are torqued at 10 Newton meters. One last thing to not forget are actually these bolts in right here. These you need to replace also because they're aluminum. And so these 2 bolts are torqued at a whopping 4 Newton meters and 45-degree angle. For the moment, this pretty much sums up the whole bottom end of the car. Also, what will be left is the baffle and oil pickup and the oil pan and all of that. But let me get to why I'm not installing it right now. And unfortunately, guys, I think this pretty much sums the whole engine build, at least for now. Don't worry, I'm also really sad about this. Since my goal of this engine is just to swap it in with in a car that has a broken N55, well, there's so many variants of this engine when it comes to the pulleys, the injectors, the high pressure fuel pump. Is it rear wheel drive? Is it all wheel drive? And so all of these variants are stuff that I can't really tackle right now with the stuff that I have. Otherwise, if I put the X-Drive oil pan and I put back my injectors and stuff, it limits me to only a certain pool of cars. And so what I want to do is I want to keep my choice of possible donor cars to be as large as possible. As soon as I buy the broken donor car, we'll be able to complete the rest of the engine. But like, to be honest, what's left of it is not much. It's just putting back the injectors, valve cover, and the oil pan. It's basically just putting back in some gaskets. But anyways, I'm really happy with all the progress that I've been able to do. I'm really hyped, guys, to swap in the engine and see if it works. It's my first ever engine build, so I'm really curious to see if I've made any like critical mistakes or if everything's gonna go relatively smooth. Anyways, Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe and like the video. It really helps my channel out, and I really want to grow this channel with you guys.